Hello and welcome back to Sprite Guard Plays HyperRogue. I want to kind of apologize for the really sleepy sound of the last couple of episodes. I was kind of going back in review of them, and I was really not happy with the way that I sounded in those episodes. Because I know that how engaged I sound can actually have a real impact on how engaging the video is. And I was so tired when I recorded those. And I wasn't able to give them everything that I've got. So I want to do better in this episode. And I also kind of want to apologize for leaving that episode unfinished. Because basically it's kind of a long story of why I thought this was a good idea. But basically what happened was I had my joystick plugged in, or my Xbox controller, and this game has this feature where the right stick of the Xbox controller will actually pan the camera, and it's very, very sensitive, and so sometimes it will just kind of mysteriously start panning without my having touched it. And so that happened as I was recording the third part of the last episode, and fairly early on, and I thought, well, okay, so I've saved this game, and on the mobile version, if I save the game and then something goes wrong, which is pretty common in the mobile version, so what has happened in the past is I will save the game, resume the game later on, do some stuff, the game will crash, and I will be able to still resume from the old save state. And that happened a lot in the Android version because it was crashing a lot. I think because of memory problems, because this game does use quite a lot of memory, especially if you do not save very often. And that can become problematic on Android devices because they tend not to have a lot of memory to begin with. But on this desktop version, what I found out is if even if you force quit the game and then resume it, it will just drop you into the icy land with a new game. So that was unfortunate. I lost that save file. We will never know what could have been, but I want to tackle this in basically the same way, with the same attitude of playing like this run matters. And part of that is just because the reason I was so tired, and I was recording that, on Sunday evening instead of Saturday afternoon, is because I was losing so many matches, or so many runs, at times when I just wasn't happy with the episode. I would lose, and it would be like 10 minutes long, and I'd say, that's not what I want. That's not the kind of video that I want to upload. And then also I was, having problems of saying things that I didn't mean, or saying things that I wasn't happy with, and kind of talking about things that I wasn't happy with, or talking in ways that I wasn't happy with. And so it was throwing away a lot of episodes just based on that, or not knowing what to talk about. And this is the third take of this episode that I've done today, and so as much as I'm saying I want to be really careful, and I want to really go into it with this attitude of playing like this run matters, I'm still struggling with this game as much as I ever have. And so it's going to be kind of an ongoing process. And one thing that I've talked about in the past in these episodes that is going to really be playing a role today is this idea, when you have a bad habit, that before you can even really take on the bad habit and start changing it, you just have to notice that it's happening at all. And so the real challenge of kind of these runs for the time being is going to be noticing when I'm not paying enough attention, noticing when I'm playing too quickly, and when I'm playing too recklessly, taking too many risks. And it's going to be really difficult, and it's going to be something that's going to be an ongoing process. But it's something that gradually I think we can get better at, and I want to continue to get better at this game because I really enjoy it, and I know that it's possible to get better at this game. I know that there are very few cheap deaths in this game, and I know that I can get to the point where I can play it so carefully and so effectively that eventually my goal is to have this kind of be, instead of being episode 12 part 1, episode 12 part 2, eventually have it kind of be more of like seasons, more session 1 part 1, session 1 part 2, and really break it up. Have each run span several episodes, and I'm doing that more in the way that I'm recording these, or in the way that I'm uploading them, but I kind of want to get to the point where each individual run is quite long. And that's a long way off. I know that my skill in this game is not really to the point where I can say that that is something that's going to be happening soon. But I had just about the best run of my life. I think actually by far the best run, now that I think of it, that I've ever had. I had it on the mobile version of this game. And I got well over 300 treasures. I think I got 53 hyperstones, 2 orbs of Yendor. And I want to try and replicate that success. And so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to skip over the Icy Land like I would do if I was speedrunning. And the reason I'm going to do that, and the reason I did it in my really successful run, is because what I want to do is get treasures from as many areas as possible before we get our Orb of Yendor. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to look for an Orb of Yendor with its key in the Icy Land, like I would do for a speedrun. And I'm going to get the key out of the Icy Land while I have no ice diamonds in my possession. And then I'm going to, on the way back, once I have the key, I'm going to pick up the 10 ice diamonds. And that way, as soon as we pick up the Orb of Yendor, we will start spawning hyperstones. Now, there's going to be a lot in between here and there, and what ended up happening in that run was I actually ended up picking up another Orb of Yendor that had its key in the Mirrored Land along the way. I had an opportunity because I cleared the graveyard, not super early on, but early enough that I didn't have to worry about dead orbs. That was a very lucky time to pick up the Orb of Shielding. I ended up really not paying enough attention. That could have been game over very easily, so that's going to be a wake-up call to me to pay more attention to what's going on around me, pay more attention to combat, and to being really proactive about combat. That's something that I have always really struggled with, is taking on monsters as soon as they appear, and really scanning the edges of the map to make sure that I am able to see monsters before they get really close to me, because if we get a couple of eagles spawning, there is actually something that I can do about it. There's probably the least that I can do about it of any of the situations that we could get into, but if I catch 2 eagles spawning early enough, when they're close enough to the edges, what I can do is I can actually move toward one of them so that they get to me at different times. And that won't guarantee that I will be able to manage to deal with them before they trap me, but it will give me a much greater advantage than I normally have. So that's really something that I need to work on. And now we're kind of going into the land where it's the easiest for me to get distracted, just because so much of it is just move in a straight line, away from, whatever direction has, or I guess into whatever direction has the fewest running dogs, and just kind of continually moving away from running dogs. And this is also one of the areas that I find the most frustrating, because it's so easy to get into a situation where there's not really anything I can do. What ends up happening is I will see an exit, and then a running dog will kind of show up just close enough to being between myself and the exit that I can't get to the exit and I have to pass it by. So that's something that can be very frustrating, but I managed to avoid that. And I think I did get a little bit distracted just because I do find it a little bit, there's not enough to pay attention to when I'm going through the Land of Eternal Motion, because it's so clear and it's so simple to get through. So we are now kind of in what I consider the mid-game. I want to save the Caribbean for fairly late, because it's a very challenging area, and it's an area that takes a very long time to get into and out of. And I want to kind of take on most of the easier areas to begin with, and then make my way into some of the more difficult areas once the easier areas are done. Partly just because I kind of want to do a build-up, and I want to have more different orbs available to me, and just partly because I want to sort of guarantee that there will be some meat to this episode, even if things go really wrong in, like, the Land of Power or the Vineyard. Now, I want to, play this area basically how I always play it, where I cut just a really wide path, and one thing that's going to be kind of a constant refrain is, my whole idea of let it go, there will be more opportunities later. And so, I want to prioritize staying near the crossroads over getting fern flowers, because fern flowers are so much more common than the crossroads is. But I want to kind of keep in mind that both of those are things that I will run into many times over and over again. And that the only thing that I can't really replace is my life. And so, anything can be replaced. Anything can be replaced except for the integrity of my own life. And so, above all else, that is what we need to preserve. And anything else that we might lose along the way, if we lose it in protection of our survival, then we haven't really lost very much. So there, fight off the fairy, and just get out ahead of the fire. Here's an opportunity where we're far enough ahead that we can actually grab that last fern flower without really letting the fire encroach on us at all. And we can get out of here, and then we have a bunch of combat that we need to deal with. And we need to be a little bit kind of cautious and clever about it, because we had different kinds of combat coming at us from different directions, but it didn't end up being too difficult. And I think, again, there, I did get a little bit kind of hasty. I'm lucky that I was actually able to read the tactics out very quickly there, and that's something that I'm getting a lot better at, and that I'm really proud of when I'm able to do it. But it's also something that I need to kind of look at and say, well, that's not good, that I was relying on that. It's very good that I was able to do that, but it's not good that I was relying on it. Now, one thing that I would really like to do in Relia, and I'm actually going to kind of abandon the crossroads for this reason, is I really want to get grimoires knocked out early on. because the Orb of the Dragon will be incredibly valuable once we go into the Red Rock Valley. Because if I'm standing on one of these hexagonal tiles, which they're actually triangular in Relia, but I have 6 neighbors right here, but 3 of them are heptagons. And so I only have 3 hexagonal tiles that I can step to from any of these hexagonal tiles. And the rock snakes will actually only have 2, because one of those tiles will be their tail. And so, with the Orb of the Dragon, we can very easily block off both of those options, and it's almost like we just have a gun with which we can shoot the rock snakes. And there's not really anything else in this game that is quite that powerful as the Orb of the Dragon, particularly being powerful against rock snakes. So that is something that I definitely want to have in our arsenal before we go into the Red Rock Valley, especially because the Red Rock Valley is one of the most difficult of the mid-game areas. And I'm not entirely sure that it's wise to go into the Red Rock Valley as a mid-game area. We may want to kind of wait till more of the late game. We may want to wait until we have Orbs of Yendor spawning, maybe Orbs of the Mind, though Mental Blasts don't work very effectively against rock snakes, and we'll probably only be able to carry 1 orb into the Red Rock Valley with us. But we may just want to kind of save that for later, just because of what I kind of mentioned earlier about wanting to pace myself and have a lot of material recorded, even if things go badly in some of the more difficult areas. So we are at 8 grimoires, and we are going to be done with this area pretty soon. I'm having a lot more trouble with tentacles today than I usually do. I usually have more ways that I'm able to block them off. But I think that was a kind of a clever play, that I managed to block it off kind of using its tail as much as I used the statues, though I was kind of sloppy there. And I'm going to have to go quite a ways out of my way because of that. So it's kind of you win some, you lose some. And I'm just going to have to kind of wind around here, but eventually we found our way around, and that is our 10th grimoire, so we can now start making our way out of here. And escaping the temple, I find, is usually not too difficult, especially if you're escaping just from level 10. Because you have these statues, it's often I often find it easier to block tentacles in on my way out of the temple as opposed to on my way into it. And I'm not sure exactly why that is. I think it may be that the tentacles just kind of spawn maybe pointing a little bit more outwards. I'm really not sure. It looks like they're spawning pointing inward, so it may be that they need to turn around. It may be that I have more opportunities to build barriers. I'm not really sure why it would be that I find it easier to exit the temple than to enter it. But that's definitely something that I find. And it may be because of something that I've talked about a little bit before in the Caribbean, that there are a lot more ways out of the temple than there are ways into it. That you have actually a lot more opportunities or a lot more different ways of getting, a lot more directions that you can go in that will get you out of the temple versus directions you can go in that will get you into it. so now we're looking for a crossroads. We have all of the treasures that we need from this area. We can grab an orb of teleport and use that to kind of get out ahead of the monsters around us. And that's actually something that I really enjoy doing, because it kind of it's a little bit like in the endless mode, or the survival mode in Super Stardust, is kind of, you have these blocks that you can't destroy that become more and more crowded around the map. And sort of the way that people have figured out to manage this is they use this sort of teleport to move themselves to an area where a bunch of these blocks have not been spawning. And I find that the teleport in this game kind of serves a similar purpose, that they allow us to jump to a space where monsters have not been converging. And now we're going to be going after emeralds, and as always I want to stay close to a crossroads. Doesn't have to be any one particular crossroads, I just don't want to get really lost in the emerald mines. I want to stay near the edges and gather emeralds that we see around the edges. And that's going to limit our options a little bit, and it's probably going to slow us down quite a bit, but I am actually pretty okay with that. I am pretty happy taking my time. And one thing that I kind of want to work on is not focusing on a single treasure type, but kind of giving myself the opportunity to go around and pick up treasures that I find near the crossroads in any land. And that's actually, so one thing that I'm kind of thinking about now is the graveyard. And we need totems from the graveyard to kind of, we don't need them, but it will really expand our options if we have dead orbs spawning, because we will have more different places that we can get orbs of Yendor from, and we'll have more opportunities to get an orb of Yendor, and we'll have a little bit more options in the emerald mine as well, if we end up doing stuff in there, because we'll be able to use dead orbs to dig through walls, which is another very valuable use of them. And you can also use them for that in the living cave. But I'm just going to kind of, one thing that's kind of frustrating about the graveyard is, because there are fewer available tiles, you don't get a lot of gems spawning. You don't get a lot of those totems spawning, just because there are so many of the cells of the graveyard are covered by graves. And so it's a lot more difficult to find totems along the edge of the graveyard than it is to find treasures along the edge of a lot of the more open, less obstructed areas, just because there are fewer cells to choose from. We only need one more emerald. I'm gonna see if I can grab it from here. And then we're going to get on our way. Let's see. Want to be careful about this pikeman, this hedgehog warrior, this flail guard. Each one can kind of trap us in a different way, and so there's a certain element of kind of gear shifting, what I think of as kind of this process of moving your focus between different dangers and different kind of modes of thinking, and it's something that I often really struggle with, because I think partly because of my neurology, I have heard a lot of other people with kind of the same neurological issues talk about this gear shifting as being very, very challenging. I have had other people with autistic people, whichever way you want to say it. I think autistic people is generally more accepted, is the one that I hear more often, especially from other autistic people themselves, and I'm more inclined to that way. I'm not sure why I said other people with autism. I think because I kind of talked about it. I started out really circumspect about it, and then I was like, no, that's not actually in keeping with how I want to run this channel. I want to be honest, I want to be really human. And also I think because of the grammar of it, because, you know, I say other people, other autistic people, I've heard talk about this this difficulty of gear shifting, of changing what it is that you're doing, kind of. It can be in terms of like what you're expecting to do, or the kind of the way that you're thinking, what it is you're thinking about, or even just like kind of what you're mentally preparing yourself for. Because one thing that a lot of us have in common is that we have to steel ourselves for a lot of things that people would not really consider the sort of thing you have to steel yourself for, like going to the grocery store. It's like you kind of have to mentally prepare yourself for the sensory assault that going to the grocery store involves, that I think a lot of people just don't experience at all. And so something like, thinking that you're about to go to the grocery store and then finding out that you're actually going to go to the DMV, is the sort of thing that can, even though it's not a huge change, it's not what you were prepared for, and so re-preparing, even for something where you're not upset about the change, it can be frustrating and difficult and even sometimes upsetting just to have to rewrite your kind of expectations. So we have an Orb of Yendor with its key in the Cocytus. That is something that theoretically could be possible, but there's too much that can go wrong, especially we have Hell right here. And so we could very easily have some demon sharks after us in pretty short order. So we are one Necromancer's Totem away from being done with the graveyard. That is something that I would like to knock out. And here is one very close to the edge. And that was a bit hasty of me. So going to remind myself once again, slow down, play carefully, pay attention to what's going on around you. And now we are going to be on the hunt for an Orb of Safety. And we are also probably going to be looking out for things like this, where we have an opportunity to possibly get some... Okay. We can deal with this Hedgehog Warrior. We can get some real inroads into some of the more challenging areas, though that did not actually break down these walls the way that I thought it did. So I don't want to go too deep, because I don't want to get trapped. But when we see stuff that's really close to the edge like that, I think that it's entirely appropriate to go after it. One thing that will kind of make the Dead Caves easier is once we get through the Red Rock Valley, we will have the Orb of Space available to us. And that will allow us to pull treasures out of the Dead Cave that we would not otherwise be able to get to. Like, we could go up to this and use some charges to grab that silver right next to us, right across the wall from us. So what we're going to be looking for is an Orb of the Dragon. And we're going to look for an Orb of the Dragon that is accessible to a Red Rock Valley. And we may actually want to go into the Caribbean in order to get the Orb of Time so that we can preserve our Orb of the Dragon a little bit longer, because sometimes it can take a while to actually find Rock Snake once you go into the Red Rock Valley. We're also going to be looking, of course, for Orbs of Yendor that we can get to, and we're going to be looking for dead orbs that we can pick up. But for now, I think I'm going to save the game, and in the next episode, we will kind of be going into the really late game, a lot of the really challenging tactical areas, and we will be taking on some of the really difficult parts. We still need to get into the Dead Cave, the Land of Power, the Vineyard. So all of the most challenging areas in the game are waiting for us, and the Red Rock Valley, of course. So that will be coming up in the next episode. And I hope that you will join me. I hope that you have enjoyed this episode, and I hope that most of all, that you have a great rest of your day, and thank you very much for watching.